What if I told you there's a bird so clever it learned to mimic the alarm calls of other species, just to steal their food? And what if that same genius is now pushing it toward extinction? Picture an island lost in time. Aldabra, a ring of coral and mangrove in the Indian Ocean, so isolated that life here evolved in its own strange directions. And in the dense, twisted forests of this atoll, there's a bird with a secret. The Aldabra drongo doesn't look particularly special as sleek black feathers, a forked tail, sharp eyes. But it possesses a skill so rare, so cunning, that scientists call it one of the most sophisticated forms of animal deception in the world. It's a master mimic. It doesn't just copy songs, it imitates the specific alarm calls of other bird species to cause panic, and then swoop in to snatch their abandoned meals for generations. This trick worked perfectly. The drongo became a kind of feathered con artist, surviving not by strength but by intelligence. But now something has shifted. The very talent that kept it alive is turning against it. Because the world of the Aldabra drongo is changing, and changing fast to understand why this bird is suddenly in trouble, we need to rewind. How did it develop this ability in the first place? And what happens when an evolutionary masterpiece meets modern threats it never saw coming? Life on Aldabra has always been a delicate balancing act. Resources are limited. Food is scarce. In this kind of environment, you either specialize or you innovate. The drongo chose innovation. Over centuries, it began to observe the other birds around it, white-eyes, sunbirds, bulbuls, and noticed something powerful. When one of them sounded a predator alarm, everyone dropped everything and fled, so the drongo started experimenting. At first, maybe by accident, it let out a squawk that sounded a little like a bulbul's warning call. The other birds scattered. The drongo was left alone with their unfinished meals. It was a revelation. Through trial and error, it refined the skill. It learned to precisely mimic multiple species' alarms. It even learned when to deploy them, not randomly, but at the most opportunistic moments. When a rival was about to eat a juicy insect. When a flock was feeding peacefully on fruit. One sharp, convincing imitation, chaos, and the drongo feasted. This wasn't just mimicry. It was strategy. And it allowed the drongo to occupy a unique niche. It didn't need to compete directly for food. It didn't need to fight. It just needed to be smarter than everyone else. For a long time, that was enough. But then the world began to press in on Aldabra. The first threat was subtle, almost invisible. Invasive species. Rats that stowed away on fishing boats. Ants that arrived in soil from imported plants. These newcomers started to disrupt the finely tuned ecosystem. They competed for the same insects and fruits that the drongo's targets relied on. Fewer resources meant fewer birds. And fewer birds meant fewer opportunities for the drongo to use its signature trick. Imagine a con artist in a town that's slowly emptying out. Fewer marks, less to steal. The drongo began to struggle, then came the second, more direct threat: habitat loss. Aldabra is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, protected in theory. But the climate doesn't respect boundaries. Sea levels are rising. Storms are intensifying. Mangrove forests, which act as crucial nesting and feeding grounds, are being eroded or salinized. The drongo's home is literally shrinking, and with less habitat, the remaining bird populations are squeezed closer together. You'd think that might make the drongo's deception easier, more birds in one place. But the opposite happened. The other species started to catch on. they became more skeptical. If a drongo cried hawk, too often with no hawk in sight, they stopped reacting. The boy who cried wolf, only this time the wolf was a bird and the stakes were survival. Scientists studying the atoll began to notice a troubling shift. Drongos were succeeding less often. They were spending more energy for smaller rewards. Some were even abandoning the mimicry altogether, reverting to more conventional foraging, which put them in direct competition with species better adapted to it. They were losing their edge, but the most dangerous threat is one they can't outsmart: genetic isolation. Aldabra is so remote that the drongo population has always been small. With no new birds arriving, their gene pool is shallow. Inbreeding reduces resilience. It makes them more vulnerable to disease, to environmental shifts, to bad luck. A single introduced illness, something as simple as avian malaria, could wipe them out in a season. They are trapped. Their genius is becoming a liability. Their world is closing, and yet there is a flicker of hope. Because the same isolation that makes them vulnerable also makes protection possible. Conservation groups have recognized the uniqueness of the Aldabra drongo. Efforts are underway to eradicate invasive species, to restore damaged mangroves, to monitor the bird's population and health. Researchers are even exploring whether captive breeding could provide a safety net, a controversial but potentially vital step. The story of the Aldabra drongo is more than a warning. It's a lesson in fragility. This bird represents what happens when evolution crafts something extraordinary in a bubble, and what happens when that bubble is threatened. Its fate now depends on whether we can protect not just the species, but the delicate, intricate web of relationships it depends on. If the drongo disappears, we won't just lose a bird. We'll lose a living testament to the power of intelligence in the animal kingdom. A reminder that survival isn't always about strength or speed, but sometimes about being clever enough to trick the world. Have you ever encountered an animal that surprised you with its intelligence? Share your story in the comments. And if you want more tales of nature's most ingenious survivors, subscribe to Rare Species.